नमो तस्य भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्य नमो तस्य भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्य नमो तस्य भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्य काये कायानुपस्ये विहरति आतापि सम्पजानो सतीमा विनय्य लोके अभिज्ञा दोमनस्सम् Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Today is Sunday, the second day of our 2-day non-residential mindfulness workshop. Yesterday we have discussed a little bit of what mindfulness is and its significance, and mainly we try to understand two statements given by the Blessed One, rather a reconciliation of two statements given by the Blessed One. One statement is that the Blessed One is stating that mindfulness is the supreme Lord of everything. And then there is a question why we aren't enlightened as yet. The reason for that is because we have got to develop 37 factors of enlightenment, of which the first one is the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So in that 37 factors of enlightenment, there is no one single item called mindfulness. So although the Blessed One is stating that mindfulness is the Supreme Lord, we aren't enlightened because we haven't established ourselves in the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The reason for that is because although mindfulness is there all the time with us, as the Lord Buddha mentions, we have never appreciated it. In the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the Blessed One is encouraging us, urging us, and inviting us to establish ourselves in the mindfulness. So in establishing in the mindfulness requires the appreciation of the very fact that mindfulness is the Supreme Lord. Just to refresh your memory, mindfulness is the awareness of here, now, and. So to bring that awareness, we discussed yesterday, it is imperative that we keep the mindfulness to the fore, mindfulness in the driving seat, keeping the body as the foundation, keeping the body as the primary focal point, keeping the body as your assembly point. So in order to establish mindfulness, in order to appreciate mindfulness, now we know it has to be, mindfulness has to be in the front seat, in the driving seat, as well as it has to get connected to the body. So we discussed a little bit in detail about these two factors, these two facets in yesterday's talk. Today I'm going to take one more step further. The stanza that I just chanted at the beginning of the talk is mentioning that you will have to be mindful of your body with 3 main qualities. One is atapi, which means ardent energy to get rid of defilements. And the second one is Sampajanu Satima, which means clear comprehension geared by mindfulness. And the last one is Vinaya Loke Abhijja Domanasa, which means you become discipline yourself in this world which is full of greed and hatred. So, of these three qualities that requires mindfulness to be based, mindfulness to be established upon, I'm going to take the second one, which is Sampajano Satima, which means clear comprehension led by the mindfulness. The reason why I'm taking the second one is because mindfulness and clear comprehension is interconnected. They are basically the evolution of the same thing. So to give to basic understanding of the clear comprehension, because we have already discussed what mindfulness is. So I'm going to discuss today what clear comprehension is. The Pali term for clear comprehension is Sampajanya. Sampajanya, if you break that word, it says Sang means swam, in other words, self, and Sampa means complete, full, and Janya means jnana, in other words, knowledge. So if you take these three words together, it's self complete knowledge. In other words, the knowledge that you have completely acquired by yourself, right? So in other words, it should not be somebody else's knowledge that you have taken from a talk, or taken from a book, or taken from a research paper, or from the internet. It should be your own, and it has to be complete. It has to be complete in the sense, when you see something, when you sense something, in order to get the complete knowledge, it is imperative you don't jump into conclusions, you don't jump into judgments, you don't take decisions. So it has to be complete, non-judgmental, suspended decision is required in order to gain the complete knowledge. Most of the knowledge that we have today, mainly in the academic and the science field, are incomplete. And that is why the knowledge that is established by one person will be disproven by another after few years. Whereas the Buddha's knowledge, people are trying their level best to disprove, but more you try to disprove it, better it gets established in the society, because it is the ultimate truth that prevails in the universe. It is the universal knowledge. So therefore, in order to have that, you should not come into conclusion, you should not come into judgment, you should not come into decisions. You will have to keep all these things pending, suspended, until you see the full picture. And the knowledge that we have today is not from the full picture. It is partial, biased, and paralyzed knowledge. So the self understanding or self realization means you will have to do it yourself, and I can't do it for my disciples. I can't do it for my family. Husband can't do it for wife. Wife can't do it for husband. And the parents can't do it for children. And siblings can't do it for siblings. So likewise, one has to do it by himself or herself in order to gain this knowledge. So when you have self gained complete knowledge, then that becomes sampajanya. So in order to gain complete knowledge by yourself, what are you supposed to do? This is where the Buddha's statement that we used yesterday in order to reconcile the two statements, which is 4 foundations of mindfulness versus Supreme Lord of everything. Mindfulness is Supreme Lord of everything. Was done by the statement which is keeping the mindfulness to the fore. When you keep the mindfulness to the fore, in other words, when you keep the awakening to the fore, in other words, when you keep the awareness to the fore, when you keep the observation to the fore, and naturally you don't take decisions. You are a simple observer no matter what happens, and that is gained only by keeping the mindfulness to the fore, mindfulness in the driving seat. So therefore that is imperative. This statement, keeping the mindfulness to the fore, is imperative in Buddha's teaching. And I'm not quite sure to what extent proper significance is given to this term by the popular Buddhism, irrespective of that. Now we are hearing it and we are practicing it, and that is the purpose why we have these sessions and educate the prospective practitioners to walk on the right path. So when you take mindfulness to the fore, as we have discussed earlier, as we have practiced now for 2 days, what we do is in our practice we use mindfulness for walking and we use mindfulness for sitting. Those are the 2 main techniques that we have selected to practice mindfulness. So when you do this, we can see how you keep the mindfulness to the fore. In our instructions we say when you are doing your sitting mindfulness, you sit upright and have your attention to the upper body, and if the respiration is prominent, you start observing your respiration. When you start observing your respiration, 2 things may happen. One is that you will be able to observe the respiration, and the other, you will not be able to observe the respiration. So in this situation, most of the people think if you have respiration and if you are able to observe the respiration, that is mindfulness. And when you are not able to observe the respiration, people assume that it is not mindfulness and you can't be mindful and your practice is weak, which is something that has to be carefully looked at. If the mindfulness is awareness, irrespective of whether your attention is with the respiration or the breath, otherwise, if you are aware of both these situations, then the mindfulness continues. It is not imperative that you should have your attention only to the breath all the time. Of course, if you have the attention to the breath, that's fine. But if your attention is not with the breath, and if your attention has been disturbed by, say, for example, thoughts, or maybe sounds, or maybe by aches and pains, but you are aware of it, in that situation, also your mindfulness is continuing. So when this happens, if you accept this as mindfulness and if you become happy that you are mindful, even if the breath is not there, then you are a mindfulness practitioner. So that is the fundamental, what do you call, basic ambiguity, misunderstanding that we have got to clear, right? So when this is clear, if we take one more step further, say for example, you are able to keep the attention to the breath. And even if you aren't able to give the attention to the breath, and if you observe whatever other thing that is coming up, say the thoughts or aches and pains or sounds, when you keep on being mindful of those things, and what finally happens is your mind will naturally come to the breath, because these disturbances are coming to disturb you, to agitate you, to take your attention away and to frustrate you. But now you are not frustrating, you become happy about the fact that you are aware of these things. So then what happens is your mind naturally, since you are not agitated, your mind naturally comes to the breath. The simile that is given by the Buddha for such a situation is that it is like, the wild buffalo that has been brought from the jungle by the farmers in good olden days. Before they are tamed, they just tie onto a very strong, very established tree or a pole. Then this wild buffalo, since it is not used to the village, and it is playing havoc and screams and try to break the rope and run into the jungle and doing all sorts of things to get the rope broken. But finally, what happens is, after all the struggle, it becomes tired and it becomes fed up. And moreover, that rope with which it is tied will go around the tree or the pole, and the wild buffalo will not be able to jump up and down anymore. So therefore it will finally fall down under the tree and rest. The same way our breath or our attention, initially it will try to run into the jungle with thoughts, sounds and aches and pain. But since we are just observing, that will not happen. That will finally settle down with the breath. So when it is settled down with the breath, either in that manner or initially without any problem, you are able to settle down with the breath, then what happens is, this breath that you are observing will be very clear at the very beginning. And when you keep on observing some time, you may observe that this breath is gradually getting subtler, right? So that is because you are not wasting your energy. So as a result, you don't require much oxygen to maintain your system. So when the breath becomes subtler, and if you are an observant person, you should not say that I need the gross breath, I need very tangible breath. I just observe the subtle breath. Then you are a mindfulness practitioner. But some people don't like it. They are looking for gross breath, saying that you don't feel breath. That is not what the Blessed One says. If the breath is getting subtler or getting shorter, or getting shallower, doesn't matter. Your job is simply to observe. So if you keep on observing, then you are observing something that is changing. So you are gradually trying to see, now without taking any decision, you are gradually trying to see the complete picture of the breath. And it is your own knowledge, right? And therefore, this observation, calm observation, ardent observation, patient observation, will lead to the breath become even subtler and very subtle, subtlest, and it may come to a point you are observing and you don't have breath anymore. You can't perceive the breath anymore. So when this happens, sometimes even the most advanced practitioners take a deep breath, because our mind is looking for something gross. So what the Blessed One says is, when the breath has become so subtle and you aren't able to observe it anymore, still doesn't matter. You can observe the fact that the breath is no longer there. And in that manner, what happens is you keep the mindfulness to the fore. Your complete observation, self-observation is continuing. So this is how you gradually learn the art of having the wise attention. So although the word wise attention is given there, when you compare that with the word sampajanya, for me it looks like, it doesn't explain enough. However, to go further, when this happens, when you don't feel the breath, and if you still keep observing, you may start observing body little more closer, little more, intensely. So why it is happening is, we have been using the breath that goes into our nose and then to the lungs and then heart, if I am right, and then from the heart it is doing the rest of the job. And therefore this breath is something that is fundamental to our existence, and it maintains the whole body in many ways. So observation of the breath, what gradually does is, even without our knowledge, taking our mind into the body. So now you don't feel the breath, but since you are observing, your mind is with the breath. Or rather, your mind is in the body. So when your mind is in the body, instead of the breath, you may start feeling your body. What is happening in your body all the time is circulation of the blood and regeneration and degeneration of your muscles. So you will not see these things as if you are looking from a microscope, but you may start feeling some vibrations, some movements, some jumping ups and downs, some subtle feeling of insects crawling in your body. So when these things are happening, now your attention is going even further, and you may get scared when such things happen, because you have been observing the breath, which was very, very obvious and which is natural, but you never expected that these type of things will happen. So you may get scared, or you may start suspecting what's going on, or whether something is wrong, or whether your practice is wrong, or whether you have done a wrong technique, or whether you have been possessed by someone. You will start making up stories. But what is the advice of the Blessed One is to keep the mindfulness to the fore. Keeping the mindfulness to the fore, you are able to see the full picture, which we call sampajanya. And now you are seeing another facet of your existence of the body, of another facet of the physical process. So you will have to, therefore, when these things are happening, you should understand, you feel the body, because you have taken your mind, which has been roaming around all over the universe, to your own body. So when the mind is with the body, you start realizing, you start experiencing certain things that are happening in the body. So if you are an intelligent practitioner, you let that happen, although it is strange, and you keep observing because of your faith in the Buddha, because your faith in the Dhamma, because your faith in the Sangha, because of your faith in your own practice, because of your faith in the teacher. So that continuous observation will lead you to another, possibly a facet, where these subtle vibrations that you experience in the body becomes even intensified. It becomes even aggravated. And here also, if your faith and faith factor and the energy factor is intact, and you will not get afraid, you will not suspect it, you will not be doubtful of what is going on, you will simply keep observing. When you keep observing in this manner, what you simply see is the natural characteristics of the body. What is the natural characteristics of the body? The nature of the body is all the time regeneration and degeneration is taking place. It has been happening ever since we were conceived in mother's womb as like a small gel. And that gel has continuously regenerated and degenerated, and we have grown into human beings, and we have been infants, and then we have been toddlers, and then we have been children, we have been adolescents, we have been teenagers, we have been young adults, we have been adults, we become old people, and then we become old haggards at the end of the day, until we die. So you start seeing this process that happens to the body. So this is when you keep on observing this. Now you have gone through physical process, you have gone through entire physicality, entire physics of your body, right? So the body is comprising of the four basic elements, which is earth element, air element, water element, and heat element. And in all these elements, the natural characteristics is appearing and disappearing. So now you are able just to keep observing it. So when you keep observing it further and further and further, then you may be tapping into your mind, because you have gone through, you have seen the full spectrum of the physicality. When I say tapping into the mind, what I mean is the connection between the body and the mind. The connection between the body and the mind takes place through the feelings. So in order to observe to this extent, you will have to keep sitting for quite a long time. When you keep sitting for quite long time, and when you keep penetrating more and more into your body, you may have feelings either inside the body or just because you have been sitting for long. So what happens there is, now observation of the physicality is changing into feelings, means your mind is suggesting now certain things that you can like and certain things that you can dislike. So when I say feelings, there will have feelings, pleasant feelings. There will have unpleasant feelings. Also, there is a situation called neither pleasant, unpleasant. Neither pleasant, no unpleasant feeling. So mainly, when you have pleasant feelings, if you are an ardent mindfulness practitioner, if you have not forgotten the fact that you will have to keep the mindfulness to the fore, you will observe the pleasant feelings as pleasant feelings and you will not get indulged in it. There is a huge risk that you may get indulged in pleasant feelings because it becomes so attractive and so magnetizing. So therefore, when you progress in your practice, it is very important that you have a teacher with whom you discuss your experiences. When you discuss your experiences, your teacher will be able to help to take your practice further. So, therefore, even if you indulge in pleasant feelings in such a situation, when you have a teacher, there is no danger. Teacher will be able to understand what's going on. And even without the knowledge of the student, teacher will be able to turn his attention to his or her attention to the right path. So, taking the other side, if you have an unpleasant feeling, again, what the Blessed One says is the same thing. You will have to simply be aware that you have an unpleasant feeling and go to the epicenter of the unpleasant feeling and just try to observe as it is. So, it is easier said than done. I understand that, but it is very much possible to a human being. So that is the advanced mind of the human beings. If a human being can't do it, and such a human being, I'm very sorry to say, is almost equivalent to an animal. The animals can't observe unpleasant feelings and pleasant feelings. When there is a pleasant feelings, we will indulge in it, and when there is an unpleasant feeling, we will somehow or other react and try to get rid of that. And that quality even we have, but we also have a quality, instead of reacting, to observe it. So that observation gives the higher quality or higher um, um, uh, mental aspect that is hidden in our mental process. So to take, when you keep on observing pleasant and unpleasant feelings in this manner, and what happens is your reactional mentality diminishes. Diminishing reactional mentality, in other words, increasing observational capacity, means you change your attitude towards the feeling. When you change the attitude towards the feeling, your threshold of forbearance increases. And this increase in forbearance threshold, patience threshold, your mind, your brain will not identify painful feeling as painful as it was identifying in the past. Similarly, the pleasant feeling that was identified as so much happy thing, now because you non-reactionally observe, it doesn't, the mind is not elated even with the present feeling. So in other words, this agitation in the mind gradually reduces, and positive negative vibration in the mind gradually reduces, and then it gets closer to the x and y axis. It gets closer to the 0 point. When it comes closer to the 0 point, and that's the place where there are no fluctuations. So that happens when your attitude is changing, and by training your mind in that manner, you can change your brain. This changing brain will be again identified by the mind in a different manner. When you are neither hyped up by the positive or the pleasant feelings, nor annoyed by the unpleasant feeling, when these two things are not there, and when it is coming to neutrality, and all what the mind will read it as, that you are no more active, that you are feeling sleepy, or that you are getting bored. So that situation is known as also feeling, because you feel it, but it is called neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling. So that is a very higher achievement in the mindfulness practice. So when you feel bored, when you feel sleepy, you will have to, according to Buddha, you will have to keep observing that as well. You observe your own boredom. You observe your own sleepiness. You observe your own monotony. When you observe that, you can go even beyond the feeling stage. In other words, the mind has been uh, uh, mm, mm, the body has been um, uh, entering into the mind by giving mental input of liking and disliking. So this liking and disliking attribute of the mind is now not at work, because you are an observer of liking and disliking. So that way you open up the door of the mind. So when you open up the door of the mind, you can see what has been really in the stock, what has been really inside the mind. In other words, when you burn out the upper tip of an iceberg, what happens is whatever the portion that has been underwater in the iceberg will come up, because when an iceberg is floating in water, what happens is 9/10 of the iceberg will be underwater. You can't see, you just see only the tip. But if you can break the tip, then because of the upward pressure of the iceberg, whatever that has been underwater will come into surface. So exactly the same thing is happening even here. When you change your attitude towards liking and disliking, and you can see why this liking and disliking has been so active, and that is in an under layer. It is a buried area of our mind. So the neutral mind, the mind that experiences pleasant and unpleasant feeling, and if you don't react even to that, and if you just even observe that pleasant and unpleasant feeling, will be able to see the hidden stock, hidden defilement, hidden decaying parts in our mind. And they are, Blessed One says, there are so many things, and one part is the usual um, mm, worldly part, and the other one is spiritual part. So the worldly part is what is in the mind, um, is the having, we call it you will be able to observe when the mind is with passion. Mind is having passion. The mind, you can see this passion side of the mind because you have gone beyond the liking towards your feelings. And this liking has been fueled, fed by the passion that has been in the mind. Now, since you have gotten rid of liking, you can see the root of it, root of liking, which is the passion. And what the Blessed One says is, when the passion is there, it is not something that you should be punished with, and it is a raw material for you to be mindful of. And when the passion is there, you simply observe that your mind is having passion, and it is still mental state only. So simply observe it, and not just simply observe when you have passion. And continuous observation of the existence of passion will give you an opportunity to observe that it is gradually fading away as well. So it is the nature that we have observed ever since we started observing the breath. The breath that we observed gradually became subtler and faded away. And the feelings that we were observing, initially it was so horrible and also attractive, but continuous observation of it will gradually fade away. Similarly, the passion also is not there to take over you. It will not be permanent. That will also pass away. So you will be able to observe that passing away nature of the mind, and it will gradually subside. So when it subsides, you should not start sleeping. You will have to observe that as well. And then that continuous observation will give you an opportunity to observe the mind with passion and mind without passion as well. And similarly, the other side of the passion is disliking. Disliking is something that has been fueled by the aversion quality that exists in the mind. So when the aversion arises, your hatred towards other beings, other people, other things, other situations is called aversion. And it's a mental state again. It's not a state that has been activated into verbal or physical. So when you see this mental state, you should not go and see a doctor, or you should not seek any other medication, or you should not start practicing your metta bhavana, loving kindness meditation. Aversion is again another raw material to work. You can recycle aversion to produce a better human being, right? So that recycling happens only when you observe the aversion. So similarly, when you observe aversion, even that will gradually fade away, not immediately, but with your continuous practice, you yourself will be able to see that the intensity of the aversion gradually subsides. So that gradual subsiding of the aversion also should be observed, and then you will be able to observe the mind without aversion as well. So similarly, the neither pleasant nor unpleasant situation, or the boring situation, or the sleepy situation is fueled by the delusion in the mind. So when you are mindful of the aversion as well as the passion, when those things are fairly under control, you may feel more and more bored. You may feel more and more sleepy, as if you have taken some drug. You can't lift your head because your mind is now completely, or rather, your mind is now gradually digging up the delusion side which you had never seen in your existence, right? So when the mind is getting deluded in this manner, the Blessed One's medication is the same. Accept the fact that mind is deluded, and the delusion is there, and keep on observing it. Then you will be able to observe it when the delusion fades away, delusion vanishes, and delusion completely goes away. So once the mind is trained into such level, mind is now fairly spiritual. So again, you will be able to see this spiritual serenity, spiritual patience, spiritual upliftment in the mind. So this spiritual upliftment, when the spiritual upliftment is there, again, it is not something that you will have to go and keep it in the safe and consume to yourself and identify yourself as that particular state. Again, you will have to observe it. So when you observe, you will see even that vanishes and that fades away. So in this manner, in Buddha's teaching, it will not give any chance for you to access and acquire and possess or declare that it is yours when you keep on observing. So in this manner, you experience the entire spectrum of physicality as well as the mentality. So this is the complete knowledge, which is the self-acquired knowledge. So when you are able to see the physical process and the mental process in this manner, you go beyond physicality and mentality. Once you go beyond physicality and mentality, your mindfulness is very steadfast. When you have steadfast mindfulness, then not only you have just appreciated mindfulness, you have developed mindfulness into such a state which can be used to attain enlightenment. So the steadfast mindfulness, therefore, will be achieved, will be gained, will be supported only when you keep the mindfulness to the fore. And when you keep the mindfulness to the fore, you are able to see the complete picture, full picture, and therefore you will have a self-knowledge of everything. So having this self-knowledge is called sampajanya. So you have mindfulness as well as the clear comprehension. In other words, sati and sampajanya. But the Blessed One says, having sati and sampajanya is not enough. You should now give the son the chance, and father has to be only in the supportive role. I will repeat, you will have to give the son the opportunity to run the show, and father should take only the back seat and give the support only. So therefore, the Blessed One says is not Sati Sampajanya. The Blessed One says Sampajano Satima, which means you develop your clear comprehension skill using mindfulness. But when the clear comprehension skill is developed, when your complete continuous self-observation is continuing, you let it happen. You take the back seat, or rather the mindfulness take the back seat, and let the clear comprehension takes place. So in that manner, we achieve what the Blessed One says as Sampajano Satima. So when you have Sampajano Satima only, you allow you allow whatever happens to your physical process to happen. You allow whatever happens in the mental process to happen. Otherwise, you will start poking fingers. As soon as you poke fingers, your clear comprehension gets disturbed, not by self-observation, but by your ego, right? So, to reduce ego, to reduce craving, to reduce clinging, you will have to simply be observant. So when you are observant, you will be able to go beyond all these negativities, all these negative energies. So in that manner, you may develop a skill that the negative energies that have been accumulated in our consciousness can be cornered, can be tracked, can be mapped. So when you map that negative energies, now it is easy for you to get rid of them, flush them away. And for that to happen, it is imperative that you have your reports. So when you have your interview reports, especially the discussion, you will have to very clearly write what happens in your practice and what observations you make in your practice. An expression of the observation is the key part in your practice. So unless you express your observation, teacher will not be able to understand what's going in your practice. So therefore, having experiences and expressing those experiences and observing them and expressing them is imperative to have a successful mindfulness practice. Otherwise, what happens is when you don't report them properly, you will be doing on your own, and you will be having your own judgment, and therefore you don't have an opportunity to go before a mirror and see how you look like. But when you see a noble friend, he will be able to see what's going on, and that he becomes the mirror, or he or she becomes the mirror, and it will be tremendously helping you to correct your path, to strengthen your path. Therefore, the Blessed One says, having a noble friend is very crucial and is the key to successful mindfulness practice and to achieve final liberation. So I have explained this clear comprehension section using the sitting practice. It is not necessary to be the sitting practice all the time. This can, in the same way, happen in the walking. So when you are walking, you may be observing the sole of the feet. And when you observe the sole of the feet, and after some time, you may see that not only you can't just observe one leg. When you observe one leg, your attention goes to the other as well. So in other words, you start seeing now, instead of the distinct characteristics of one leg, you start seeing a process here. Walking is a process. So walking means you balance your weight on one leg all the time, and you start seeing this process. So when your attention goes in this manner to the process, what happens is, as in the case of breathing or respiration, your attention is now with the body. So when the attention is with the body, you, instead of seeing the walking, you may see the nitty-gritty of the body, these vibrations and sensations that happens in the body may come into surface. So when they come into surface, sometimes you may forget to walk, or you may be walking for the sake of walking, and your attention is not at all with the walking. Your attention may be in the flux that you see, since your mind is with the body. So what I simply want to tell you is that, although my explanation was based on only sitting and those movement, continuation of the mindfulness from the body to the feelings and to the mind, should not happen only in sitting. It can happen in walking as well. Not only in walking, it can happen in day-to-day activities as well. So in order to promote this, in order to trigger this Sampajano Satima quality into the practice, and especially to introduce the clear comprehension practice, the Blessed One is giving a separate section in the four foundations of mindfulness called Sampajanya Pabbha. In that, what he says is, you once you do your sitting practice, and then he says, once you get up from the sitting practice, not that the mindfulness is over, your mindfulness has to continue. So therefore the Blessed One says, once the sitting practice is over, be aware of the postures. If you are standing, be aware of the standing posture. If you are walking, be aware of the walking posture, which we have already done. And if you are sitting, you be aware of the sitting posture. If you are lying down, be aware of the lying down posture. So in this manner, after the sitting, whatever the posture that you are in is used to continue mindfulness. So it is in line with, therefore, clear comprehension, and Sampajano Satima continues. And then in the next paragraph, the Blessed One says specifically, that is the Sampajanya Pabbha, clear comprehension Pabbha, clear comprehension chapter. In that chapter, he is going beyond the cardinal postures. He is taking the semi sections of the cardinal postures and says, ask us and urge us and invite us to observe the semi-sections, semi-postures in the main postures as well. And he is explaining the entire spectrum of body movement, physical movement, and including urination and defecation. So in any activity that we do, he wants us to be mindful of our body. He wants us to be aware of our body. So being aware of our body in that manner gives you the opportunity to be with yourself all the time. So when you are with yourself all the time, you are with your best friend. You don't require any other friend. So this is what the Blessed One is trying to give the humanity. And again, for you to do this, there is no need for you to ask permission from anybody. And if you practice this, nobody should be able to take as well. Nobody should be able to price or tax that as well. So it's a skill that each and every human being possesses. So therefore, without any hesitation, without any repercussion, without any side effects. This is a medication that everyone can take to achieve what we are looking for, the ultimate happiness of living. So therefore, I will conclude the session saying, may you all have that ultimate happiness which all the living beings are looking for. May you be well, happy and peaceful. Blessings of the Noble Triple Gem.